My name was Omar. I was a Muslim judge in a city where tradition reigned supreme, a place where obedience to the Sharia was not just a rule but a way of life. Respected and feared, I wore my authority like armor, leading my people with what I thought was divine justice. But beneath that facade, a chasm of despair yawned wider each day as the weight of my own questions crushed my spirit. I found myself praying, yet feeling nothing but an echo in the silence. Then came the darkness, one fateful moment when everything I thought I understood crumbled. I almost surrendered my life in that shadowy abyss. But instead, I met a being of light. Jesus called my name, piercing through the suffocating gloom, and with that call came a revelation, a truth foreign to my hardened heart. He illuminated the deception woven into the fabric of my world, showing me that the very systems I upheld were mere distractions from the heart of divine reality. What I encountered was more than just a spiritual awakening. It was a battle, a war unfolding in the unseen realms, pulling at the very threads of my existence. I realized the struggle was not merely against my doubts, but against the oppressive forces of control that infiltrate both faith and society. That moment marked the beginning of my transformation. It ignited a longing for truth that defied everything I had ever known. Returning from that experience, I found myself a stranger in my own life, a heretic in the eyes of my family, chased by shadows of fear and loneliness. Each step towards the truth felt like walking a tightrope stretched over an abyss I once feared. And yet, the desire to seek and share this newfound understanding became my lifeline, the only way to break free from the chains of my past. This journey has led me to a profound realization. The call is not just for me, but for all who feel trapped in a cycle of worship that limits their connection to the divine. In a world where silence is compliance, I refuse to remain quiet any longer. I am here to unravel the threads of my story, to shed light on how an encounter with Jesus resonates beyond personal transformation into a universal message of liberation and hope. So I invite you to join me on this journey. Before we dive deeper, take a moment to comment below, where are you watching from? What time is it there? I want to know how far this message of truth is reaching. And if you feel the stirring of your spirit, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. If you love Jesus, this is where you'll find revelations that can change your life forever. In a deeply conservative Egyptian city, the weight of tradition loomed large over our community. My name is Jamal, and I served as a judge, a position that symbolized authority and divine will under Sharia law. For years, I adhered strictly to our Islamic principles, believing that I upheld justice and righteousness. Yet, beneath that cramped exterior of obedience, I grappled with feelings of disconnection and doubt. In a society where questioning beliefs was not tolerated, I often felt suffocated by the very traditions I was sworn to uphold. Then came that fateful day, an event that would shake the foundations of my existence. A sudden illness struck me, and in a matter of hours, I found myself teetering on the brink of death. I slipped into a coma, entering a realm of darkness that felt both familiar and frightening. I remember the stillness, the absence of sound, as though the world had suspended itself in time. It was in that state of limbo that I encountered Jesus, an experience that would alter my perception of life and faith forever. When Jesus appeared to me, a radiant light filled the darkness, transforming my surroundings into a landscape of ethereal beauty. His presence was a balm to my turmoil, warming my heart and mind. As he spoke, revelations unfolded before me, revealing the hidden agendas that plagued our world. Jesus explained how the elite manipulate faith to control the masses, steering them toward fear and division. My heart raced as I absorbed the truth of our human condition, realizing that the spiritual war one had been unknowingly fighting was not just an internal struggle, but a broader battle for humanity itself. The visions he shared painted a stark picture of deception. I witnessed leaders wielding power in ways that consumed the very essence of hope and love within society. Wars bred from misunderstanding, divisions created on purpose to keep us separate, all woven together by the threads of fear and ignorance. Each revelation struck me like a thunderbolt, illuminating the shadows that had clouded my judgment and principles. I saw clearly how our rigid interpretations of faith had often led to suffering instead of unity. As I awoke from that life-altering experience, a new urgency gripped my spirit. I realized that my journey must extend beyond my personal awakening. It was time to challenge the deception that kept my community in chains. The truths I had encountered demanded articulation, an evangelization of sorts, aimed at inspiring others to seek their own spiritual truths. My heart ached with a sense of purpose, but I was acutely aware of the potential for rejection and backlash. I needed to confront not just the world around me, but the very core of my beliefs, and that would mean risking everything I had known. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but the power of the truth I had discovered fueled my resolve, pushing me to step boldly into the fray of the spiritual war that awaited. During a Sharia ruling, I sat at my desk, the weight of my position pressing down on me like a stone. I'm Omar, a 40-year-old judge, and while I present an imposing figure in my traditional attire, there's a turmoil within me that my eyes betray. I have always been respected in my community, but beneath the surface of my authority lies a deep emotional void born from an internal conflict that grows more acute with each passing day. As I preside over cases dictated by Sharia law, I'm often left questioning the true essence of justice in a realm where obedience is valued over inquiry. For years, I performed my duties with unwavering dedication, interpreting the law as best I could within the confines of my beliefs. Yet increasingly, I found myself grappling with despair as I witnessed how easily justice could be manipulated in the name of tradition. Each ruling felt heavy with the burden of responsibility, and I often questioned whether the decisions I made upheld truth or simply adhered to the hidden agenda perpetuated by those in power, the elite who benefit from a blind adherence to rigid dogma. The tension between my faith and my conscience reached a tipping point during one particular case. A young woman stood before me, her eyes pleading for compassion in a society that had long silenced her voice. I felt a stirring within me, a call to act not just as a judge, but as a human being, as a vessel for truth. As I prepared to render my decision, I suddenly felt a wave of dizziness wash over me, and before I knew it, I was enveloped in darkness. In that black void, something miraculous occurred. I found myself in a space where fear and despair could not follow. It was here that I encountered Jesus, his presence radiant and filled with love. As he approached, a warmth engulfed me, and his eyes reflected an understanding that transcended all boundaries of human experience. When he spoke, it was not just words. It was truth that pierced through the layers of deception I had accepted. He revealed the hidden agenda behind the enforcement of strict interpretations of faith, showing me how fear was wielded as a weapon to perpetuate control. Through this revelation, I learned that the spiritual war we all face is not just one of beliefs, but one of love, acceptance, and unity. Jesus illuminated the depths of my soul, urging me to embrace the liberating power of love and compassion. As he shared insights about the state of the world, wars, division, and the suffering created by leaders driven by greed, I felt the chains of my own beliefs begin to loosen. The awakening inside me was profound. I realized that everything I had longed for was not found in strict adherence to dogma, but in the truth rooted in love and understanding. When I awoke from that divine encounter, I was a changed man. I discovered that my mission was no longer about just delivering rulings. It was about advocating for truth, challenging the very foundations of the societal structures that kept my community in fear. The liberation I experienced was not just for me. It was a call to help others escape from the dark shadows of deception that cloud their hearts. With renewed purpose, I knew I had to speak out, to urge my community to see beyond the limitations placed upon us. The journey ahead would be fraught with risks, but the fire ignited within me would not be extinguished. I was ready to step into the light of my newfound truth, prepared to face whatever challenges awaited me on this path of awakening. During prayers, I began to experience a profound emptiness that gnawed at my spirit. I'm Omar, a judge holding fast to my role in a world bound by the confines of Sharia law. Every time I stood among my community to lead the faithful, I could feel a disconnect between my heart and the words that had long been a source of comfort. Instead of filling me with conviction, prayer became a reminder of the questions I was too afraid to voice. I looked out at the familiar faces, my family, my friends, and felt the walls of expectation closing in. My mind danced with doubt, and my heart ached with longing for deeper truth. The emptiness deepened over time, mirroring the tension that simmered beneath the surface of my everyday life. Night after night, I was haunted by unsettling dreams that left me feeling lost and frightened. Each dream depicted a struggle, a spiritual war raging within me, filled with shadows and voices questioning the very foundations of my beliefs. It was as if the fabric of my reality was unraveling before my eyes. These visions didn't just disconnect me from my faith. They sowed seeds of distrust in the system that I had dedicated my life to uphold. Then everything changed dramatically. One evening after such a dream, I found myself in a near-death experience that shattered my understanding of what it meant to truly live. In a moment of sheer chaos, I was struck by a sudden illness that plunged me into darkness. In that void, when I thought my life had come to an end, I encountered Jesus. His presence lit up the shadows that had loomed over me for so long. The warmth of his light enveloped me, offering a profound sense of safety amid confusion and pain. As I stood in his presence, a wave of revelation washed over me. Jesus spoke with such clarity and love, imparting truths that peeled back the layers of deception I had unknowingly accepted. He showed me the hidden agendas governing our society, the ways in which the elite manipulate our beliefs, using fear to maintain control over us. I saw the separation and division that stemmed from misunderstanding and ignorance, both within my community and around the world. Each insight was a sobering reminder that the spiritual war one felt within was reflected in the broader struggles faced by humanity. When I awoke from that transcendent experience, I was a changed man. The truths I had encountered ignited a fierce commitment to reveal what had been hidden, to challenge the narratives that had kept my community in chains. The urgency to share my journey surged within me. I understood it was not just about my awakening. It was a calling to help others question their own beliefs and overcome the fears that kept them shackled. This was not merely a personal battle, but a movement toward truth, one fueled by the realization that love and understanding could break down the barriers of division. Now, I stood ready to embrace my mission, aware that the path forward would require courage in the face of adversity. After suffering an emotional collapse, I underwent a near-death experience that would alter the course of my life forever. My name is Omar, a judge entrenched in the rigid legalities of Sharia law, and for years I believed I was serving a righteous cause, but the weight of expectations had been pressing down on me, suffocating my spirit and leaving me feeling hollow. It was as if I was living a dual life, externally performing my duties with conviction, while internally I struggled with growing doubts about the very foundations of my beliefs. That fateful day began like any other until the emotional strain became unbearable and I found myself collapsing in my office, darkness swallowing my consciousness. When I slipped away, I entered a chilling realm that felt like a dark spiritual courtroom. Fear wrapped around me like a shroud, leaving me disoriented. As I looked around, a sense of foreboding filled the air, punctuated by a chilling silence. It was here, in this suffocating abyss, that I encountered Jesus, his radiant light piercing through the shadows surrounding me. When he called my name, a wave of warmth flooded my being, dispelling the darkness that had clouded my thoughts. In that moment, all my fears melted away, replaced by the gentle yet profound presence of love. Jesus spoke to me with clarity and purpose, unveiling the hidden agendas of the societal systems that wielded power and perpetuated deception. He illuminated the ways in which religion could sometimes obscure the very truth it was meant to reveal. I felt my previously unwavering convictions begin to crystallize into questions I had been afraid to ask. As he revealed the essence of the spiritual war at play, I witnessed how easily people could be manipulated by the elite, using fear and division as tools to control the masses. I saw firsthand the deceptions that prevent society from reaching a genuine understanding of unity and love. Jesus helped me grasp how these systemic distractions served to keep individuals, including myself, from awakening to their true potential. Each insight was a call to action, a compelling urge to recognize the truth amid the layers of dogma that had historically kept us divided. When I finally awoke from that encounter, the emotional upheaval was both liberating and terrifying. I realized that my experience was not meant solely for my own benefit. It was a call to share the awakening I had experienced with others. I knew that stepping out into the world and voicing these truths would come with immense risks, backlash, and potential rejection from those I had once trusted. But the urgency of my newfound mission overshadowed my fears. I felt compelled to advocate for those silenced by deception, to help others understand the truths I had been shown, knowing that together we could face the spiritual war that lay before us, forging a path toward a brighter, more united future. Returning to life after my near-death experience was not the joyous reunion I had hoped for. I'm Omar, and as I opened my eyes in that sterile hospital room, I could feel the weight of rejection poised to crush me. Once revered as an imam, now I felt the sting of being labeled a heretic, the very embodiment of betrayal in the eyes of my family. Their expressions were a mix of disappointment and distaste, creating an atmosphere thick with unspoken words and painful silences. The truth I had encountered, the revelation delivered by Jesus, set me on a collision course with everything I had ever known, and now I was left grappling with the fallout. The emotional burden was suffocating. Each day a reminder that I had chosen a path that alienated me from my loved ones. My mother's cries haunted me, a constant reminder of the bond I severed in pursuit of my newfound faith. The fear of losing her love and respect intensified my loneliness, but alongside that fear was an undeniable, budding desire to uncover the truth further. How could I allow their rejection to silence the awakening that coursed through me? Deep inside, I knew the message of love and grace that Jesus had revealed was too important to keep hidden, and I felt compelled to explore it, even if I had to do so in secret. I immersed myself in research about Jesus and Christianity, spending countless hours online, reading scripture, and watching testimonies that mirrored my own struggles. Each video and article provided me with clarity, illuminating a world that had previously been shrouded in confusion. I began to see the underlying threads of the spiritual war being fought, not just within my heart but in the world at large. The hidden agendas of the elite, the manipulation of faith to control and divide. These were all part of the deeper narrative that impacted our lives. My mind raced as I absorbed each revelation, connecting dots that illuminated the deception that kept so many of us shackled in ignorance. At times, the weight of it all felt unbearable. I grappled with my identity. All the years spent in service teetered on the precipice of everything I now understood. I often questioned whether speaking out would be worth the cost of estrangement from my family. Yet, there was a growing strength in me that countered those fears, a realization that my journey was not solitary. Every time I met with others who had experienced their own awakenings, I felt the vibrant energy of hope and truth surge through us. Our collective stories echoed the longing for liberation from the chains of outdated beliefs, infusing me with the courage I needed to continue. In these small gatherings, I began to discuss the truths I had unearthed, the importance of understanding our shared humanity amid a landscape riddled with division. The discussions often drew on contemporary issues, wars instigated by power struggles, technology used as a means of control, and the social fabric torn apart by misunderstanding. The more I shared, the more empowered I felt, as if each word uttered pierced the darkness that surrounded those still enveloped in the shadows. I realized I was not only advocating for my own awakening, but becoming a voice for others in their yearning for truth. Yet, despite my resolve to speak out, the ghosts of past relationships still loomed large, reminding me of the sacrifices I would have to make to fully embrace the mission that lay ahead. In my quest for understanding, I immersed myself in the Bible, desperately seeking clarity amid the chaos that had become my life. I'm Omar, a judge who once held fast to the principles of Sharia law, but the spiritual war inside me has led me down a path I never expected. After my encounter with Jesus during my near-death experience, I realized that the truth I had been searching for was no longer found in the rigid confines of my former beliefs. Each day became a struggle, as I navigated the tumultuous waters of faith and despair, determined to forge a new identity while wrestling with the fear of losing my past. The process of turning to Scripture felt like a lifeline thrown into stormy seas. Each passage I read filled me with hope and curiosity, as if I was unearthing treasures long buried beneath the weight of deception. Watching testimonies of others who had experienced similar awakenings filled my heart with solace. I discovered a supportive community of believers who understood the struggle of moving from darkness into light. Their stories resonated with mine, echoing sentiments of confusion, fear, and ultimately liberation. Each shared experience became a thread that connected us, reinforcing the idea that we were not alone in our journey. Yet, amidst this newfound peace, a cloud of anxiety loomed heavy over my heart. The fear of complete estrangement from my family haunted me daily. I had spent years building a life deeply rooted in my faith and community, and now that foundation felt precarious. My parents, who had once been proud of my position and devotion, were now confronted with the bewildering reality of my transformation. As I wrestled with my desire to share the revelations I had encountered, I felt the tug of my old life competing against the hope of my new journey. Jesus revealed to me the hidden agendas that manipulate society, showing how the elite wield power to sustain a cycle of fear and ignorance. I recognized the impact of these deceptions not just on my individual life, but on the broader social fabric. The barriers erected between us, barriers based on misunderstandings and rigid dogmas, became painfully evident. Each insight I gained urged me to confront the narratives I had once accepted without question. I felt the urgency rising within me to speak out, to share what I had learned, and urge others to explore the truth that could set them free. As I continued to study and engage with this new theology, I felt an empowering sense of purpose emerging in my life. I became increasingly driven to advocate for those who felt marginalized or trapped by the very beliefs I was trying to navigate. Despite the looming threat of rejection from my family, I felt compelled to illuminate a path toward awakening and collective healing. The journey ahead would require bravery, resolve, and a willingness to face the tempest of emotion that accompanied such profound transformation, but I was ready. Armed with my faith and the truth I uncovered, I stood ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead, convinced that love and understanding would always triumph over fear and deception. In secrecy, I began praying to Jesus, each whispered prayer an act of defiance against years of tradition and expectation. My name is Omar, and for decades I upheld my role as a judge, firmly rooted in my faith and proud of my position in the community. But everything changed after my near-death experience, during which I encountered Jesus. Since that moment, my heart had been on a turbulent journey, grappling with the profound truths he revealed to me. The spiritual war within me intensified as I sought to reconcile my long-standing beliefs with the clarity I had found in his light. As I dedicated my evenings to prayer, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me, a contrast to the chaos that had engulfed my thoughts. Each prayer to Jesus was both a confession and a plea for understanding. I prayed for guidance, for the strength to embrace this newfound revelation. The more I prayed, the more I felt the chains of my past begin to loosen. I knew that my journey was leading me towards something greater, a spiritual awakening that demanded a commitment unlike any I had ever known. Ultimately, the decision to get baptized came as the culmination of this inner struggle. It felt like a sacred act, a powerful symbol of my commitment to a faith that starkly contrasted everything I had been taught. I felt my heart race with a mixture of joy and fear. Joy for the liberation I sought, and fear of the repercussions I would face from family and friends. The hidden agenda of societal norms loomed large in my mind, a reminder of the backlash that could ensue. Yet in that moment, the desire for truth and connection to Jesus outweighed my fears. The baptism itself was a transformative experience. As I emerged from the water, I felt renewed, as if I had shed the weight of years spent entangled in deception. This was my spiritual rebirth, a powerful affirmation of my new identity. In that moment, I understood that my personal awakening was part of a larger calling, one that would empower me to help others escape their own chains. I reflected on the revelations Jesus had shared with me, realizing that I was now tasked with being a vessel of truth in a world rife with misunderstanding and fear. Yet, the path forward was fraught with challenges. I could feel the tension building as I prepared to share my story and beliefs with others. Would they accept this new Omar, the man who had abandoned the traditions of his upbringing? As I navigated my new life, I longed for acceptance while clinging to the hope that my family might one day understand the depth of my awakening. Armed with the truth I had discovered and the love of Jesus guiding me, I was determined to step into the spiritual war that awaited, ready to advocate for those still trapped in their own deceptions and driven to spread the light that had transformed my own life. Omar feels a divine calling, realizing that my transformation is not just for myself but a mission to warn others about the ongoing spiritual warfare. I'm Omar, a judge who once lived firmly within the constraints of Sharia law, yet my awakening compelled me to look beyond the familiar walls of my life. I could no longer sit silently, burdened by the truth I had uncovered during my encounter with Jesus. The revelation that had shattered my world also ignited a fire within me, driving me to share my experiences, to speak out against the deception that enslaves so many in our society. Each day since my awakening felt like a battle against both external and internal forces. I began to notice the fear that gripped my heart as I contemplated the ramifications of my newfound mission. The realization that my voice could disrupt the status quo weighed heavily on me. It was a dangerous undertaking in a community where dissent is often met with hostility. But as I reflected on the spiritual war we are all engaged in, one that spans across political, social, and spiritual dimensions, I knew I could not remain a passive participant. We were, after all, living in a time of great deception. The elite often manipulated our beliefs, spreading fear and division to maintain their hold on power. My heart raced with urgency as I immersed myself in the teachings of Jesus. Each moment in prayer felt like a conversation with the divine, filling me with the courage I needed. I recounted his revelations, understanding that they were meant to shatter the illusions that cloud our perceptions and bind us in ignorance. The hidden agendas I had learned about were insidious. I saw how they played out in wars, in social strife, in struggles that left families and communities fractured. I felt compelled to raise awareness, to awaken others to the truth, even if it meant risking my own safety. The tension between my desire to speak out and my fear of losing everything I held dear became a constant source of conflict. I wished to share the awakening I had experienced, but feared that my own family would not understand. The thought of being branded a heretic haunted me, even as the desire for truth burned brighter. I longed for the day when I could connect with those who were still trapped in the cycle of fear and misunderstanding, helping them to find their own paths of awakening. Each prayer became a plea for guidance, hoping to find the strength to break through the barriers that held me back. And so I made the decision to approach my community, starting small. I sought conversations with those who, like me, felt an inkling of doubt. My heart swelled with hope as I began to share my story, recounting the experience of Jesus' love and the truths he revealed. Even when faced with skepticism and fear, I felt a transformative connection with those around me, a sense of solidarity driven by a shared longing for something more. I realized that every step I took in embracing my mission was a step toward liberating not just myself, but others caught in the same spiritual war, urging them to seek the enlightenment waiting just beyond the veil of deception. The poignant moment arrived when I decided to leave my home and change my name, a symbolic crossing into a new life in Christ. I'm Omar, once a respected judge in my conservative community, but my journey through the spiritual war had led me to this critical juncture. The decision brought with it an emotional storm, a mix of relief and heartache. I was filled with fear about what lay ahead, but I knew deep within that I couldn't remain tethered to a system that had become suffocating and limiting. My former life felt like shackles around my soul, hindering my ability to connect with the truth that had been revealed to me. As I stepped out of my home for the last time, each stride felt like both a release and a weight. The streets I had walked countless times faded behind me, replaced by the unknown. I felt the echoes of familial voices warning me against my decision, admonishing me for embracing what they saw as heresy. I couldn't shake the pain of leaving my past behind, yet the light of Jesus that I had encountered illuminated my path, urging me toward the freedom I so desperately sought. The name I had carried was a reminder of a life rooted in rigid tradition, but today marked the beginning of a new chapter filled with hope and awakening. In this new life, I was determined to embrace the mission that had begun to take shape within me. I dedicated myself to spreading the revelation I had received. I've learned that the truth I now held was not just meant for me. It was a calling for others who found themselves in spiritual turmoil. Each interaction I had with those seeking understanding turned into leaflets of hope, sowing seeds of faith that I fervently believed could transform lives. Despite the struggles I had faced, I began to see that my suffering had a purpose, guiding me toward a destiny I had yet to fully comprehend. However, the battle was far from over. As I ventured deeper into my new journey, I encountered challenges that reminded me of the deception that permeated our world. The hidden agendas of the elite were apparent as I saw how society often muzzled voices of dissent, keeping individuals trapped in cycles of misunderstanding and fear. I became acutely aware of how those in power twisted faith to manipulate the masses, a stark contrast to the unconditional love and truth Jesus had shared with me. Each day brought a renewed urgency to challenge these narratives, to confront the oppressive forces that sought to keep people divided and fearful. Navigating this landscape was daunting, and the isolation from my family weighed heavily on my heart. I yearned for their understanding, to show them how my faith in Jesus was not a rejection of our past but an embrace of a deeper truth. Each night as I prayed, I held on to the hope that one day they might share in the awakening I had experienced. The journey ahead promised to be one of courage and conviction, but I knew that every step I took could cast light into the shadows of deception, urging others to seek their own paths toward liberation. I felt that with Jesus by my side, I could face any struggle ahead, stepping boldly into a mission that was as much about others as it was about my own transformation. Years later, I found myself thriving in a refuge that I had carved out for myself, a sanctuary where I was dedicated to my mission and impacting the lives of those around me. My name is Omar, and after the dramatic shift that followed my near-death experience, my purpose became clear. I had embraced a new identity, one rooted in the truths revealed to me by Jesus. Each day, I immersed myself in a community filled with seekers, people yearning for the same liberation I had found. My experiences had shown me the power of faith to transform lives, and I was committed to sharing that message widely. Yet, amidst the joy of my new calling, the yearning for reconciliation with my family lingered like a shadow. I remembered the faces of my loved ones, the confusion and disappointment etched on their features when I rejected the beliefs we had once shared. There were nights when I sat alone, grappling with the ache of separation. I longed to bridge the gap and help them understand that my awakening was not a rejection of them, but rather an embrace of a deeper truth. The emotional turmoil was compounded by a sense of urgency. I understood that the spiritual war we all faced was a battle for hearts and minds, one that required unity instead of division. As I navigated the complexities of my new reality, I realized the importance of my mission to shed light on the hidden agendas that manipulate our beliefs. The elite, a group that capitalized on division and strife, often obscured the truth with layers of deception. I watched as their grip on power fractured communities, pitting individuals against each other in a fight for control. My heart ached for those still trapped within this web of manipulation, unable to see the forces at play in their lives. I felt that every conversation I had with others was a chance to awaken them to the reality I had come to understand. A chance to peel back the layers of falsehood that kept them shackled in fear. In my work with the immigrant community, I saw firsthand the struggles they faced. Many had fled oppression in search of safety and freedom, only to find themselves wrestling with their identities in this new land. I shared my story with them, recounting how Jesus had transformed my life and opened my eyes to the truth. Each testimony resonated deeply, igniting sparks of hope and realization. These encounters became a source of strength, reinforcing the idea that my journey was not just about my own awakening, but about collective liberation. It became clear that the truths I had unearthed could serve as a bridge, helping others reclaim their voices and destinies. Yet the journey was not without its challenges. I often feared that my messages of hope would fall on deaf ears, especially considering the societal pressures that urged conformity. As I continued to evangelize, I realized that the tension I felt was a natural part of the process, a reminder that the path to awakenings is often fraught with resistance. But I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I had a duty to speak out against the deceptions that kept us all in chains. The love and truth I found in Jesus compelled me to rise above the challenges, pushing me to act with urgency, to confront both the internal and external barriers that threatened to silence us. I was ready to face whatever lay ahead, emboldened by the knowledge that each testimony could pave the way for someone else's awakening. As I reflect on this journey, a journey that began with despair and culminated in a profound awakening, I am compelled to ask you, have you ever felt a flicker of truth amidst the shadows of confusion in your own life? I'm Omar, and while my experience as a judge initially tethered me to a narrow view of faith, it was in the depths of darkness that I encountered a light so powerful it demanded my transformation. This is not just my story. It is an echo of a collective struggle, one that transcends boundaries and beliefs. Together, we find ourselves in the midst of a spiritual war, a battle for our souls and understanding, where unseen forces strive to maintain our divisions. Those elite powers thrive when we remain shackled in ignorance, unable to connect with our innate unity as human beings. But we are not powerless in this fight. The call to awaken is for all of us. It urges us to confront the fears that bind us and to embrace the love that liberates us. Are you willing to heed that call and question the beliefs that may no longer serve you? I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a moment that awakened your spirit or challenged your beliefs? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insights might just resonate with someone else who feels lost in the shadows. Remember, you're not alone. We are in this journey together. Every voice matters. And if this message has stirred something within you, don't leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond and activating the notification bell. It's vital for you to stay connected, because what lies ahead is a deeper exploration of these truths, one that could ignite further revelations in your life. As we prepare to unveil the next chapter, join me in our upcoming video as we explore another incredible testimony of transformation and hope. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. I'm Omar. Until next time, remember, each of us carries the light of truth, waiting to shine in the world.